Hello, my name's John, and I'm from NovaStor. Today we're going to cover the feature of NovaBACKUP 19.1 that is the image backup to virtual hard disk function. The image backup to virtual hard disk function, or VHD, is the ability to take a physical machine's hard drive and image it to a virtual hard disk to then utilize as a Hyper-V virtual machine. And we're going to go ahead and click on the image backup and then use the default option here, next. And this screen is going to show us that we have the ability to click a backup button. So go ahead and click backup and then next. And now we're getting the drive information for the drives that are connected to this physical machine. In this case, it is an internal SATA-based solid-state hard drive. Now normally you're going to want to choose the entire disk. So in this case it's disk 0, which is our internal drive. You could select individual partitions or take away individual partitions that you know you do not need in order to be able to utilize or boot this physical drive as a virtual hard disk. But in most cases you will want to choose the entire disk. So in this case it's disk 0, and then for backup type you're going to choose Microsoft Virtual Drive, VHD. Click the browse button to browse over to your destination storage location. Now in my case, I already have a network device added for my network path that I'm going to be telling the backup to image to. In that case, it's one of our NAS devices, and I'm going to say next here, and I'm going to say finish. Now at this point the backup is in progress. It is actually writing a single VHD virtual hard disk file over to our NAS device, and that process can take anywhere from 30 minutes to a few hours. It all really depends on the type of hard drive that we're imaging and the amount of space that's allocated on that hard drive, the amount of space that's actually being used. And in this case it takes about an hour, so we're gonna fast forward to the stage where the file's already done in this case. So at this point the image backup to VHD has completed successfully, and we can go ahead and close this log and minimize NovaBACKUP. So this is the ultimate file that gets stored out as a VHD file. And one thing to keep in mind here is it is recommended to convert your VHD to VHDX, and luckily Microsoft has a built-in method for that inside Hyper-V Manager. It's called the Convert VHD to VHDX function. So we're gonna go ahead and load up Hyper-V Manager in front of us here, and we're going to go ahead and click in the Actions menu. There's an Edit Disk function, and there's a notice there. We can click Next. We're gonna go ahead and browse over to that NAS location and not use the default in this case. The location where our VHD is stored is on the NAS, remember. So we're gonna go ahead and navigate over there. And in my case, this is the VHD file. And we're gonna select that and click Open. Next. And in this case we're going to do a convert. Next. And we're going to choose VHDX and leave it on the default, which allows for dynamic expansion of that virtual disk in case you want to grow the disk size dynamically. And as far as the location where to store the VHDX, this is up to you. You could put it on a local hard disk if you have enough room, or you could put it on a network location like the NAS. In our case we're going to go to a NAS, so we're going to navigate back over to that network resource that we were in before. In this case I'm going to choose the VHDX folder, and I'm going to also append the name of the server before the backup image file name, like so. And at this point I'm going to fast forward the video to the completion of the conversion. So here we have the file ultimately completed. The conversion to VHDX is done, and we can minimize the screen. Back in Hyper-V Manager, we're ready to import that VHDX to create a virtual machine out of it. And so in order to do that, we're going to click New, Virtual Machine, click Next here, give the machine a name, and you can change the storage location. The default's going to be the C drive. Click Next. Now this choice here for generation 1 and 2 is important to note. Generation 1 virtual machines can use VHDX or VHDX files, but generation 2 VMs can only utilize VHDX files. Note that once a VM has been created, you cannot change the generation. And there are some requirements here to note. Only the following Windows guest operating systems are supported as Gen 2 virtual machines. That's Windows Server 2012, Server 2012 R2, and Server 2016, as well as workstation OSs including 64-bit Windows 8, 8.1, and Windows 10. Generation 1 VMs have a requirement of anything below Windows Server 2012 or anything older than Windows 8. And as well as any kind of 32-bit operating system, you'll need to use Generation 1 here for this selection. Now there is another note that we need to mention for VHD limitations. There's 2 key items to note currently with NovaBACKUP's image backup to virtual hard drive feature. First of all, Microsoft VHD or virtual hard disk file format itself is limited to 2 terabytes in size, equating to 2040 gigabytes. That means that if the physical machine's hard disk volume that's being imaged to VHD contains more than 2 terabytes of data, the VHD format will not support this, as the size of the VHD file format itself is limited to 2 terabytes in size. An upcoming version of NovaBACKUP will have a image backup to VHDX function built in. So for this Windows Server 2016 physical machine that I have converted to virtual hard disk, I'm going to go ahead and choose Generation 1 here and then click Next. And this is the screen where you're going to attach the virtual hard disk, the VHDX file that you converted earlier. So we're going to move down to the middle option, Use Existing Virtual Hard Disk, and click Browse. The file that I actually copied from my network resource, my NAS device, was copied locally to the E drive on this server. So we're going to go ahead and navigate to that E drive and pick the folder and select the VHDX file, click Open, and go ahead and click Next here, and then click Finish, and it's going to do the creation of that virtual machine out of that virtual hard disk file. Once the virtual machine is created, you're going to see it in the list here, and that's the one I have highlighted. Now, prior to turning on this machine, you may want to go through some of the settings for the virtual machine. For instance, you may want to set it to have more than 1 core. You know, if the original physical server had more than 1 core, you may want to also increase the memory to something similar to what the physical machine had in it. If the hypervisor machine can support, you know, more than say 2 or 4 cores, then you can go ahead and bump up the settings for the virtual machine here. And in my case, by default, the virtual machine will be created with 1 logical CPU. You can go ahead and increase that here on the processor area, click Apply, and then over on the memory area you can go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and increase it to 8192 because that's more similar to the physical machine's hard drive, memory allocation. I'm going to turn off dynamic and just leave it at a static 8 gigabytes of memory. And when you're done with the settings here, go ahead and click OK. And now we're ready to do a connect to the VM. That's going to show the screen virtually here in front of us, and then we're going to want to click the Start button. You can either go there or you can go to Actions Start menu. So at this point we're ready to go ahead and start that VM. Now just keep in mind the first time that we start this virtual machine, it's going to have to investigate the differences in physical hardware versus how it can handle it virtually. So it will take quite a bit longer the first, I would say, 2 or 3 times you do power up this virtual machine. And so don't worry about the boot time so much, because you can play around with you can optimize the speed settings, like by increasing the logical CPUs or the physical memory that you have assigned to the virtual machine. Here we can see an animation of Windows trying to figure out that hardware, and once that's done, you'll get to the regular login screen like you would see on the physical machine to whatever flavor of Windows you're running. And once you get there, you're going to want to log in and just confirm all the devices in Device Manager are correct. If you have any warning signs or exclamation marks on your hardware, you will have to figure out how to get those drivers installed now that it's in a virtual machine environment. So here you can see we have the Windows Server 2016 start screen. You can go ahead and log into the virtual machine now. So once you're done there, you'll go ahead and shut down. The next couple of times that you power back on, you may see it's a little bit slow, but what I've seen is normally the third time you do power on this virtual machine, it's quite a bit faster than that initial startup process. Now, if you do have any issues booting the virtual machine the first time, we do have a knowledge base article, and that's going to point you to a walkthrough on how you can repair the boot sector, because it is pretty common to have the virtual machine not boot up once it was taken in physical form and now made to a virtual. You will sometimes see that it can't boot right away to Windows, and you might get a standard kind of repair Windows screen. We'll link the article in the video, and you'll be able to see those walkthroughs. They're pretty easy to do. Normally you just have to have the ISO file for the flavor Windows that you are trying to get virtually running here, or you can use the original installation media, and what you do is you just assign that ISO or CD DVD to the virtual machine and tell it to boot to the CD, and the walkthrough will tell you how to do that. And at this point, I just wanted to show those articles in our support knowledge base. So if I bring open a web browser and go to this address, support.novabackup.com, it's going to show a search box here where we can search for articles. So what I'm going to type in is just P2V, hit enter there, and it's going to show various results for the ability to repair the virtual machine's boot sectors. So any of these articles you can follow to do the repair of the boot sector, and you'll see it has a step-by-step everything that you'll see. So usually this screenshot here in the article is what you may see if the boot sector needs to be repaired. So if you screen like that, you can go ahead and assign the ISO for the operating system to the virtual machine, and that's by right-clicking on the virtual machine and doing a settings, going down to the DVD drive setting. Either assign the ISO or actually give it a physical DVD drive assignment, and then you run a few commands to do the repair, and you're doing that from the being able to boot the boot disk to that DVD or ISO, and running those standard Microsoft repair commands that you see in this list of 4 commands that you'll be doing. So I just wanted to mention that, and then back on the virtual machine, we can just make sure you can sign into it just like you were able to when it was physically in place. It may take a little bit longer to log in. That first few times, like I was saying, it'll take a couple of reboots to get the speed going quickly, but we can see there's the desktop, and I can do my troubleshooting, like going into the device manager and seeing if any of these devices have issues. And in my case, there is one device that's showing an exclamation mark, but that probably will get cleared up by the next reboot. But as you can see, all the other devices, such as video cards and IDE drivers and things like this, are already detected, and that was done during the first booting of the virtual machine, where it took quite a bit longer to boot that first time. So this concludes the article, and have a good rest of your day, and have fun doing the physical to virtual machine conversions. Thank you so much for watching the video. Bye bye.